Hello, my name is Pastor Kathy Kohler. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm State Park and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. Greetings. We are reading through the Bible with commentary. We are in the book of Ecclesiastes, which is collected wisdom attributed to Solomon, probably not actually Solomon, but written as though by Solomon. And a lot of it talks about hevel, which we talked about the last two sessions. This Hebrew word hevel, Hevel, which means vapor, breath, pointlessness, hopelessness. Well, not hopelessness, and it gets translated in this translation as vanity. And vanity in the sense of something not worth fussing with, something that is just, but vanity also, we get vain, we get very self-centered and all caught up in ourselves. And in some ways, vanity also applies here as well. Like we're all caught up in ourselves, and so what? And in our first three chapters, we've read basically that everything we've ever done, it's already been done. Everything we're going to do will already be done. Everything that we earn is going to be, we can't take it with us. That whole expression of the idea of whatever we earn, whatever we work for, whatever we do, and then what? And then we die. So what's the point? And it isn't that we shouldn't work. In fact, it says the thing that's left for us to do is to take pleasure in our food and drink and in our work. Take pleasure in our toil. But at the same time, it's like, but our toil is vanity. It's hevel. It's this breath. It's this vapor. So don't put your value in the work. Do not get your sense of worth, your sense of who you are, your self-esteem, your value from your work, your pleasure, your stuff. Your value comes that you are a creation of God, that God made you, and that you are living before God. That said, then God gives us all work to do, and we all have things that need to be done, even if it's just the laundry or mowing the grass or taking care of the kids or driving somebody somewhere. We all have things to do, and the best thing in life is to enjoy the work that God gives us to do, not to find our value in it, not to chase after it, not to say, oh, I'm going to build this empire, but to say, okay, I have work to do, and I'm going to get up and go do it and enjoy it while I do it. And of course, in our last session, the most famous passage from Ecclesiastes, beautifully sung by Simon and Garfunkel, to everything there is a season, a time for everything under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to build up, a time tear down, a time to mend, a time to rip. There are things have a season. And so not everything stays the same. Everything comes and goes and passes. So we are now up to chapter 4 of the book of Ecclesiastes, which also has another relatively famous passage. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are practiced under the sun. Look, the tears of the oppressed, with no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors there was power, with no one to comfort them. And I thought, the dead who have already died, more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has not yet been, and who has not yet seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. So commentary that there is oppression, there has always been oppression, there will always be oppression, and it's a terrible thing to have to see this oppression, especially the people that are being oppressed with no one to comfort them, and how awful that is, and how terrible it is to live and to see those things. And the best are the people who haven't lived yet and haven't seen the oppression, that life is full of oppression all the time, and how discouraging that can be. Verse 4, then I saw that in all toil and in all skill in work come from one person's envy of another. This also is vanity and a chasing after the wind. Oh, and the Hebrew is, or a feeding on wind. Chasing after wind, feeding on wind. If you were trying to eat wind, it certainly wouldn't be very satisfactory. And if you try to chase the wind, you're certainly not going to ever catch it. But all toil and all skill in work come from one person's envy of another. Is that interesting? Our ability, our skill comes from somebody's envy. Well, I don't know. Sometimes you just do what you have to do. Verse 5, fools fold their hands and consume their own flesh. Better is a handful with quiet than two handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. So again, this is a couplet. This is written in poetry form. Fools fold their hands, consume their own flesh. So you're lazy and just sit around, then you end up eating yourself. Better is a handful with quiet than two handfuls with toil. So on the one hand, fools consume their own selves because they don't do anything. On the other hand, better to have a little bit than to work hard and have a little more. So not too much toil, but do the work we have to do. Verse 7, again, I saw vanity under the sun, the case of solitary individuals without sons or brothers, yet there is no end to all their toil, and their eyes are never satisfied with riches. For whom am I toiling, they ask, and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. So in order to get rich, you have to deny yourself pleasure. If you eat, drink, and be merry, then you have no money. And we read through in Proverbs that the fool basically spends all their time eating and drinking, and then they have no wealth because they spent it all. And that somebody who is more careful and more able to control themselves accumulates more riches over time. So maybe this is the antidote to that. On the one hand, on the other hand. And I think in life, there's always, well, even just yesterday with the season, there's a time to work and there's a time to play. There's a time to work hard and gather. There's a time to be generous and share what we have. And we don't ever live in one place or the other. We live in the middle. We live in the tension between we need to work, we need to rest. We need to earn money. We need to be generous and giving and enjoy the money that we've earned. If we spend all of our time earning money and no time enjoying the money that we earn, then we die. And so what did we do all that for? But if we spend all the time enjoying what we have and not earning what we need to earn, then pretty soon we go bankrupt and don't have, it's a both and. We have to be diligent and do the work. We also should enjoy the fruits of our labor. We should enjoy our food, enjoy our work, and enjoy our time on earth because we can't take any of it with us. And it all goes to somebody else eventually. So it's all vanity. It's all breath. It's all going to pass. To navigate this, I think, is not necessarily easy. So this next section, I'm going to read verses 9 through 12, so 4 verses that go together, I think. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. But if they fall, one will lift up the other. But woe to one who is alone and falls and does not have another to help. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though one might prevail against another, 2 will withstand 1. So how wonderful to have 2 instead of 1. And the modern proverb for that is many hands make light work. And how much easier it is to do the work we have to do when we have somebody else to do it with. How much easier it is to go through life when we have a friend, a spouse, a partner. When you have, it's a good reward for your toil. If you fall, the other one can help you. And even just and sleeping. So many years ago, went out to the Grand Canyon in November and slept in a tent. And this was before I got all the camping gear I have nowadays. We were so cold. Oh my gosh, we were freezing. It's 7,000 plus elevation in November. We were so cold. The next day we went and did a little tour in the National Park Ranger. We were looking at these old Anasazi houses. They're almost like a hole in the ground that they had built. And the ranger was saying, these rooms are very small. Can anybody guess why the rooms were so small? I said the woman who just slept in a tent the night before for warmth. If you have a bunch of people together in a little tiny room, you are far warmer than if you have one person by themselves in a great big room. I said, yes, that's absolutely why these buildings, the rooms were very small. How do you stay warm? You stay together. But the other half of verse 12 is what I named this session after. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So 2 is good. 3 is even stronger. If you have 3 cords and you braid them together, you can't just like rip them apart. You might take, if you had a string or something that you could break with your fingers, if you have 2 of them, that's a little harder. But if you weave 3 of them together, if you braid them together, you can't just pull them apart with your fingers anymore. They're much stronger. So this idea of having 2 or even 3 people together, you are stronger. And lots of times people love to quote this verse of why you should have a spouse. And I would expand that as a person who happens to be single and who knows a lot of single people, lots of widows and widowers and people who just never got to get married. Even for us, God calls us to have friends. And when we have friendship and connections with other people, then we can support each other. Literally right now my car is in the shop and I'm driving somebody else's car, and I'm very grateful. And if that person's car were to break down, then we are able to help each other and to support each other. And that's what's wonderful about 2 or even 3 people helping and supporting each other. So verses 13 through 16, the rest of this chapter. Better is a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who will no longer take advice. Oh my goodness. I would say better than a wise anybody that's willing to take advice. But if you're poor and you're willing to hear advice, then you're better off than somebody who's super rich but will no longer take advice. And sometimes I think the richer you are, the less likely you are to be willing to accept advice. At least that's what I have often seen. Verse 14, one can indeed come out of prison to reign, even though born poor in the kingdom. 15, I saw all the living who, moving about under the sun, followed that youth who replaced the king, for there was no end to all the people whom he led. Yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and a chasing after the wind. And all of the places where it says chasing after the wind, the Hebrew, it's actually, or possibly, a feeding on wind. And either way, if you try to feed on wind, that's not going to be very satisfying. Or if you chase after wind, you're never going to catch it. So all of these things that we can do, where do they get us? What do they do for us? But having a friend, especially having 2 friends, that is going to keep you strong and help you when you fall and help keep you warm. So let's get very practical. Even if we are never going to get rich, but we can have a friend, then of course that's the whole point of the movie It's a Wonderful Life, that riches are one thing, but riches of friendship and connection and a whole community, that's riches that can't be bought with money and which are so much more valuable in the long run than money. And so now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace. Like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you again next time.